Welcome, everybody, to the Weekly Grind Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Fabbri, with my co-host tonight, Doctortoddlee. Todd, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
All right, Todd, we had to suspend our episode from last week to this week. It's a week later. We're finally recording it, and this is our episode called Beating Addiction. And with us tonight, we have a couple of special guests. First up, we have with us, I call him Papa Joe, he's a good friend of mine, Joe Rubino. Joe, how are you doing? Welcome to the Weekly Grind.
Hey, Keith. Thanks for having me, man.
All right. And then also with us, my wife, Tyler, who some of you may know out there. So, Tyler, welcome to the Weekly Grind Podcast that you listen to every single week as you sit next to me while I record it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So, guys, we're doing this show. It's called Beating Addiction, and each one of us has some stuff that we can talk about, background addiction. Some of us had a little bit worse than others. So important to point out beforehand, before we even start, that addiction comes in many ways, shapes, and forms. It can be chemical, it can be mental, it can be a lot of different things, but addiction is an addiction. And each one of us has a little bit different story on one that maybe hampered us in the past that we've worked hard to overcome. So without further ado, Joe, I'm going to turn to you first. I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit, give me some contest history, that kind of stuff, a little bit of background on you, so everybody can learn who Joe Rubino is.
Sure. Well, I'm 47 now, and back in the early 90s, like when I was 22, 25 years old, I competed in Michigan. I did the Michigan in 94. That was the year that Carl Jackson won the overall. And then shortly after that, I did the Central States, which was in September of 94. And I bumped up to a middleweight from a lightweight there. And then that was about it for a long time, up until about 2013, where I decided to get back into it here in Illinois. And I did a couple of Illinois shows. But it was around that time when I kind of fell, victim to what was going around back then as far as chemical dependencies and so on. And then most recently I've competed, last year I did Masters, Nationals, and North Americans. And did okay. I took first in the welterweight class for North Americans in the 35 and 40 and over. Didn't fare so well in the Open, but still was a good experience.
All right. And are you getting ready for anything next year, or are we off for a little bit here?
Yeah, we're taking a break here. As of right now, I've kind of officially hung it up, but who knows? When I hit that 50 mark, I might get the itch again.
All right. Yeah. And to my wife, Tyler, tell us a little bit about yourself, some of your background, some of the things you've done in the past as far as athletics and with competition and that.
All right. I'm Tyler Fabbri. I am 25 years old. I was a competitive dancer my entire life. I started dancing at the age of 2 and danced all through college. I ran track. I played hockey. I played softball. I've done a bunch of different things, but I've never really loved anything as much as I've loved bodybuilding. I've competed in figure in 2013 at the Nicole Wilkins. Didn't do so hot, but it was a good experience. And then in 2014, I competed in women's physique at the Grand Rapids. And again, I didn't do very well going against women who were 20 plus years older than me. But it was a good learning experience. And then I've had 2 little boys. I have Kyson, who will be 2 in April, and Colton, who's 2 months old. So I took some time off, obviously, having the boys, and I plan to now compete at the Western this November, obviously, having Keith as my coach. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. So that's a little bit of background on these guys. If people don't know, I mean, I've known Joe for a couple of years now. We've talked many times about bodybuilding and other stuff, just in life in general. So I got a good background on him and where he's coming from. So I thought he'd be a perfect candidate for this show. So without any further ado, Joe, let's hear your story. Tell us about how addiction affected your life, how you got into your problems a little bit, and just share with us what you can from your story, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I started lifting when I was 16 years old, and I was a very naive kid. I think when I was like even 18, 19, I was still probably 14, 15 in my head.
Right.
And, you trust people and you do things. And, I was lifting, and, there was a big thing going on the West Coast. It kind of trickled its way towards Michigan, and that was, people were using a synthetic analog of morphine called Nubane. And, people were taking it. They were saying, hey, it's anti-catabolic, and they'd take it, pre-training. And the thing is, you get high from it, So I think people were kind of using that as an excuse to get high. But,
right.
So you find yourself doing it and trying to obtain it. And, before you know it, you can't get it anymore. And then you start turning to other things. And that's where, an opiate's an opiate, no which way you look at it. So,
right.
You start hearing about things and people doing other things. And at 23 years old, I was a full-blown heroin junkie. And it, I had my little battles with it where I would come clean and, get back in lifting and try to stay clean, and I'd relapse and such, and I competed, in between all that too. Right. Seems like every time I was prepping, though, I was clean, and then after the show, I'd start hanging around the wrong crowd again,
Right.
So, that's when it kind of all started. I got stories, things that I, once you go down that road and you start doing it, and obviously it's no longer just to get high, it's just so you can live, so you can function, so you're just thinking about when I'm going to get the next fix. And, you sit there and you drive downtown Detroit to get a fix. You're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, why am I doing this? But yeah, there's some moments I had that were like rock bottom, we used to go to, get all the guys together and we go down to spring break. And I remember that we were planning on going, but I had this huge addiction. And I'm like, what am I going to do?
Right.
So I'm bailing the guys. So what I ended up doing is I ended up buying, $500-600 worth of heroin. And I cook it all up and I take it with me down to South Padre Island, and thinking, okay, I can get by, for 6 days with what I got here and not get sick or whatever. Well, you go down there and you start partying and doing whatever. I zipped through all that stuff in about 2 days.
Right.
And everyone's hanging out in the sun in front of the beach. And where am I? I'm in the room with the shades, the curtains, pitch black in there. And I'm shaking and shivering and crapping on myself and withdrawing. And I'm like, oh, man, I got to do something, So next thing you know, you're trekking over to Mexico to get us fixed somehow or another. And, I don't know where I'm going with this stuff, but it's crazy. I ended up in some nasty ass bathroom in Mexico, almost dying from a cocaine overdose because I thought I was injecting heroin. And I don't know how much cocaine I injected in my vein, but I felt like there was like a siren going off in my head, and I can't even tell you how fast my heart was beating. I thought I was gonna die. But made it through that. And had my battles, but I ended up moving to Chicago in '95 just to kind of clean up. And I think having a good support system, I think that's where a lot of people just kind of fail and fall into that rut for so many years. And I have a pretty good family and support system that got me on my feet here in Chicago. And I think that was the best thing for me to do, just get away from triggers and bad influences and stuff. So I moved to Chicago in '95, and that was it. I cleaned up. I did have a relapse in Chicago, but then that was in in '95. But I ended up straightening up then. I think October '95 was the last. I've been clean since then. So the gym has always been that outlet. It's always been that safe haven. Where our sanctuary. And I think that's I think people that compete in bodybuilding and do this sport, like you said in the beginning, we have addictive personalities. I think we just, if we direct that energy more in a positive way, it could pay dividends, or, it could also drive people nuts because we know how our significant others get around us when we're in prep. So,
right. Right.
So, that's kind of just the gist of my history with that. But yeah, your the amount of money that you spend, daily, and you're hustling, you're doing what you can to make a buck, you're doing things that you never thought you'd be doing, stealing from families. I mean, it's just not a good place.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to those that have never been around anything like that, it's probably shocking and stuff. I mean, I've been around people like that, so it's not shocking to me to hear that story. But what's shocking is that you lived through injecting cocaine. That's, I mean, that's pretty scary stuff. But the things that you'll do when you're, like you said, when you're pressed to that issue and you need a fix, it's either get sick or it's continue on, and you've got to do what you do. That's where the addiction comes in. It becomes more than just mental at that point. Now it's become physical.
Yeah. I mean, to put things in perspective, I brought enough heroin with me that spring break trip to get me past, and I went burned through it all. But I also had about 40 Vicodins that I brought too.
Wow.
And I took those 40 Vicodins probably in about, 2 days, and I still was sick. So that's where my central nervous system was as far as the amount of heroin I was taking. I needed that much to operate. So when I started and it hit me hard. However, that cocaine did straighten me up.
I'm sure.
I came back to the room and everybody was sleeping. And they're like, "Man, what do you want?" I'm like, "Come on, man, let's go by the pool. Let's go to the hot tub." Everyone's over there. Like, "What happened to you? You were on your deathbed 5 hours ago."
Right. Todd, can you explain a little bit about New Bane? Because you said that's what's got it all triggered and started. About what New Bane is, for those who don't know.
Honestly, it just sounds like it's a different half-life opiate. All opiates convert into morphine in the liver.
Right.
So, like, methadone has a really long half-life, whereas heroin has a short half-life. So the shorter the half-life, the faster you get to peak concentration. The speed of change is what triggers the addiction. So an example would be like Test Pro hits your peak value in 12 hours,
right? Whereas
something like EQ might take 4 weeks before you feel it. So you're not going to get addicted to any rush that takes 4 weeks to reach, but you could get addicted to a rush that takes a couple minutes.
Right.
So when you inject something, it's the fastest way to get it into your bloodstream. Obviously, you're directly putting it in your bloodstream. Snorting something is the next up from that. Inhaling it is the next up from that. Eating it is the next up from that. So, for instance, smoking weed, you get a high quick, whereas if you eat a weed brownie, you have a completely different type of high. So with the different, so New Bane was a more medically functional version of an opiate for pain killing and whatnot, whereas heroin is almost like you remove the pain killing effect and just get the addictive property.
Right.
And it was a way of controlling people is to get them addicted to heroin. This is, I think, in the 1800s. Is to get them addicted to it, and then you just take it away if they stop doing what you want.
Right.
So it was a way of controlling a population.
Right. With the New Bane there, that was actually one of the vices of Paul DeMeo back in the day, too. That was the thing he was most utterly addicted to was New Bane, and it eventually became heroin before he ended up passing away. And that, I mean, it was an epidemic, like you said, Joe, in the 90s and stuff that had made its way out here. It really made its way around, and it was really just in the bodybuilding circles. These guys were using New Bane, and a lot of it, I think, too, it was an excuse to get high, but I think a lot of them, too, had such pain, joint pain and stuff, that they were utilizing that as a painkiller as opposed to, like, Percocet or something like that, because they felt, well, it was safer than Percocet. But it really wasn't safer than Percocet. They ended up just being, like you said, full-blown heroin junkies.
Yeah, I mean, the withdrawals from New Bane, I mean, you'd get some sniffles, and it just became more of a craving. It wasn't the physical effects was very minute compared to what heroin was, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, it was just that constant chase. I mean, any junkie knows, that chase and trying to get that monkey off your back, it just sucks.
Right.
But, I think, it takes a special breed to go through prep and suffer, So I think that's one of the things. You see a lot of people that get addicted that never, come off, or like I mentioned before, you got friends that are living in their parents' basement still till they're 40. But I think being able to suffer through the withdrawals, I think there's some parallels there with prep. I think that you have that condition to do it. You got that warped mentality to put yourself through that pain. Where you're like, screw it, all right, I'm going to stick this one out and sit on the couch for a week and just tough it out. What else can you do? So I think there's definitely we have that little thing in our head. Anybody who competes and can go through prep and deal with that.
Right.
Can toughen themselves up and condition themselves for that.
You said you had your support system that helped you get to Chicago and helped you clean up once you got to Chicago. Who was the main portion of that support system?
My sister.
Okay.
She was living out in Chicago since 1990, very successful. She was the first one I told when I finally admitted that I had an issue,
Right.
And she flew out here, and there was a big intervention with my brothers and her, and in that time I was working at those health clubs called Fitness USA back in the day. I'm not sure if you remember those.
Okay.
It used to be called Silhouette American and Fitness USA, and I was running a health club, but my addiction was getting the better of me. I was signing people up and taking the cash and not writing up the deals,
Oh.
And, I ended up getting canned.
Right.
And that was about it. And I'm like, all right, moving to Chicago, and just got involved here with work and sales, and because I've always been a good salesperson, so I was able to stick it out here and clean up my act.
Cool. And then you took all the time away. Now, when did you actually get back in the gym, or were you just never out of the gym, even though you were kind of back and forth with the addiction?
Yeah, the gym was always there. Even when I was addicted, obviously when I went through the withdrawals and shortly after, I took some time off, but I always maintained a good, I always maintained going to the gym, a few days a week and whatnot. I think since the time I was 16, the only time I took like a good 6-month period off from the gym was when my kids were born, and you're dealing with the kids and life and the babies and stuff like that. And that was secondary to me at the time,
Right.
So that was about all I've taken off my whole life was that. But yeah, in my 30s, I did let myself go. And I still made it to the gym 3 days a week, but I eat a whole pizza every night from Little Caesars, so it didn't matter. Right,
exactly. Counterproductive.
But so yeah, I really haven't taken much time off. I've always kind of, like I said, the gym has always been that safe place, I think for all of us.
Right. All right. Todd, you got anything on that? You any questions for Joe?
No, I know that story pretty well. I think my first NA meeting was when I was 18, and I think what he said makes a lot of sense, that the personality types that do bodybuilding versus the personality types that usually get into addiction are almost polar opposite. So I was not surprised that people would become full-blown addicts and completely cold turkey go off their drugs just to do a bodybuilding show and then get re-addicted again after.
Right.
That's pretty impressive and almost unheard of when AA, the most successful form of anti-addiction, is only a 10% success rate.
Right.
And it's like 1% of people make it 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very small amount and stuff. You'll go to those AA or NA meetings, and you'll see people that have been going to the same AA NA meetings for 10 years, and they probably relapse 15 times in that 10 years. And it's very seldom do they, and you talk to the people that are running them are usually the only ones that are successful out of all the people that are going to them, and they're all former addicts themselves.
And the irony is that the meetings tend to be for extroverts to share their feelings,
right?
But they never read the book that actually teaches you how to get sober. The introverts who would read the book wouldn't be going to the meetings. The only introverts who read the book at the meetings, like you said, are the table leaders.
Yeah.
Or the ones running the program. And they're like, we're going to keep trying. They're not going to read the book, though. And so you have a bunch of people who have no idea what they're talking about, sharing their opinions, and that's all anyone hears. The person who actually knows what they're doing is the one who has to keep quiet because he's just facilitating the table.
Right.
So big book studies actually popped up in Michigan where people discuss the big book and they read from the big book and then people discuss that section of the big book. That's starting to catch on and is a lot more successful.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on to Tyler now, so you can let her tell her story about how she got involved with her addiction, which was basically a body dysmorphia addiction, and the way she looked. So, Ty, go ahead.
All right, so my story is a little bit different. I was never addicted to a substance, but I was addicted to my appearance and the way that I looked. Like I said earlier, I was a dancer, competitive dancer for as long as I can remember. And obviously, as I got older, the outfits got smaller, the crowds got bigger, the comments became more known, and you had to play the part. You had to look the part. And that was, for me, a lot of pressure. And I just happened to take it way too far. I don't really exactly remember when it started, but it eventually got to the point where I just completely stopped eating altogether. Um, I was a junior in college when it was really bad. I'm 5'8", and I was barely hitting 100 pounds on the scale. Um, so, I mean, it was a struggle. I didn't eat. I drank a lot. I partied a lot. And a lot of that was just to kind of numb any feelings that I had whatsoever towards myself. I, in all honesty, there was nothing about myself that I liked. I didn't like looking in the mirror because for me, I saw a monster, I guess you could say. I never saw what other people saw. So I picked myself apart pretty badly. I eventually, my junior year in college, I remember I had moved back home with my parents, and one morning I literally woke up and I just thought, like, I cannot live this way anymore. I am so miserable. I had already been told that if I didn't change my habits, that the chances of me ever having kids were very, very slim. And so one morning I woke up and I told my parents that I was done. I was quitting collegiate dance. I and I did. I texted my coaches. I told them that I was done, and I actually dropped out of school for that year because I had to remove myself from all situations that were causing those issues for me. And I don't want to blame it all on dance or all on that aspect of my life because it wasn't just that, but that was a huge trigger for me. So I did. I quit dance and I dropped out of school as a junior in college. Um, it was rough. I seeked out a personal trainer who at the time helped quite a bit, but ended up being another negative in my life. Led me down the wrong path and into some not so good people's arms for a while. But the gym definitely saved me. It turned my life around, honestly, 100%. Instead of looking at myself and hating the way that I looked, I began to build this image of myself that I wanted in the first place, but I didn't know how to accomplish. I had this image in my head of what I wanted to look like, but it wasn't realistic for me to accomplish by starving myself. So yeah, I began training. I fell in love with training and decided to do a show in 2013. And ever since then, I've been able to turn it around by not starving myself and by just following. I mean, I still have issues every day as far as being afraid of gaining weight, which all girls do. I mean, all guys do too. It's not just girls. But I do still have those issues, and I battle with them, and I probably will my entire life. But having a structured plan that I can follow on a regular basis, it's teaching me every day that it's okay to live your life. It's okay to obviously eat food. And I'm using it as a positive instead of a negative. And I have two beautiful boys that I was told for a long time that I probably would never have. So the gym and bodybuilding has definitely changed my life drastically.
When she says that she dropped out and quit dance, the thing about that is that she was the team captain of the Davenport University competitive dance team that was a national placing program. And not only that, but she was an All-American. So she left behind quite a bit and realizing that was causing most of her issues at the time. and needed to quit that cold turkey. So that had to be an extremely hard thing to do, knowing that you had been doing that your entire life and you were at the level you were at.
Yeah, it was really difficult to do that, but I knew that at that point in my life it was either I give up something that was really important to me to survive, to live, and to be able to live a life that I wanted to live, as far as having kids one day and being healthy. Because, I mean, if I wouldn't have stopped, my next step was probably death.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at pictures of her that when she was there that are on her Facebook and her Instagram and stuff, it's like a completely different person. You wouldn't even recognize her by looking at her. There was literally nothing left to her. So, compared to what she is now, and even before what she was before, when she was healthy, like when she was a freshman or a sophomore in college, age 20, 21 years old, she was, healthy still. And then you look at her like less than a year later, and it was like a completely different person, transformation wise, as far to the wrong direction, as far as just being basically a shell of herself. I mean, she went from like being about like 150 pounds to 100 pounds soaking wet. So, it was, and it's an everyday thing, and I can attest to her struggling as far as, this and that, because she sometimes will kind of get off track and be like, okay, I'm kind of struggling right now with what should I be doing? And that's where I come in, to kind of help to facilitate that a little bit and get her back on track as far as what she should be doing from a food standpoint. She never just goes without. I mean, it's that without eating. That I think that part of her is gone, knowing better. But
it's the
mental portion of it. She'll eat because she knows she has to, but it's like, the issue of what should I be doing, because she's looking at herself through tinted glasses, basically like we do, like all of us do, I think, at some point in time, especially being in bodybuilding, where we look in the mirror, not necessarily what's there in the mirror. What we're looking at is necessarily what we're seeing. Anybody who's ever prepped for a show can attest to that. You can look at yourself and be like, I look like shit. And you have like 15 other people that know what they're talking about. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Dude, and it's that, for her, that's an everyday life thing. That's not like, just something that happens during prep. That's something that happens for her almost daily. So, it is a little bit of a struggle. The good news for her is that seeing a lot of that myself, and for myself, and seeing the way I look at myself in the mirror when I prep, I kind of understand it, so I'm able to help with that. But it's an addiction still. Like I said at the beginning, addiction comes in all shapes and forms. She's addicted to something that she couldn't attain. She's addicted to a look that she could not attain because she didn't know what that look was. But she was constantly chasing that look and trying to do it in an unhealthy way, where to the point where she even told me, where she said, I look at myself now and I look at myself then. And after she started getting herself healthy, she didn't realize how bad she was until after the fact.
Yeah, when I was 100 pounds, I would stand in the mirror, and people would tell me every day, you're sick. There's some, not in a mean way, but there's something wrong. Like, you need help. Like, you need to find help or get help. And even my friends, my friends and my family would tell me every day, like, you need help. And I lost a lot of friends, and I lost a lot of those people in my life because of it. But I just didn't realize it. I didn't see it. I didn't know it was happening until now. When I look at those pictures, I'm like, wow, like, I was sick. Like, I looked awful.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break here, guys, and we'll come back with some more of this. So we will be back in just a minute.
Have you ever wished there was a site devoted to providing true information about bodybuilding? One that shows you what the top bodybuilders are really doing? It's all here at musclementor.net. Nutrition, training, supplements, super supplements, contest prep, final week prep, and everything in between. There's training logs, diet logs, scientific articles, and hours of video footage covering every detail involved with building muscle and losing body fat. Brought to you by prep gurus Justin Harris and Brad Hall, all for only $9.99 a month. That's right, musclementor.net. Let's get free. Valhalla Labs at valhalla-labs.com. Created by and biochemist, the best in testosterone support and intra and post-workout nutrition.
And we are back. All right. So the first portion, guys, we talked to Tyler and we talked to Joe about sharing their stories, which I'm sure, to some people there's some shocking stuff in there. To those of us that have been around the world of addiction, it's not so much shocking, but it is just truth, and it is what it is. And I'm glad that both of them are here to talk to us about it today, and that they both are able to beat their addictions. Todd, you've got a little experience in the subject yourself. Why don't you tell us about your story with alcohol?
All right, so where to begin? I would say my first time I drank, I was like 12, and we were at a bar mitzvah, and it was like there's this tray of wine out, and me and my buddy Shane, like killed the whole tray of it. And I grew up around drugs and alcohol. Neither of my parents really went to college. Not that that's a big deal, but it wasn't like a big deal to me to drink or smoke at 12. And, I pretty much stayed away from drugs and focused on school until I was 16. And then kind of got in with the wrong crowd. And the cliche, the parents got divorced, but that had nothing to do with it. And so I started taking acid. I started with acid. I thought that weed was going to dull my mind, but acid was going to open doors to the spirit planes or some bullshit. And so I basically expanded my horizons with acid, and I did that for a while, and eventually, like you're 16, you really don't have a lot of ways of making money. So I was like, I don't know, I'll buy big amounts of drugs and then break them up and sell them in smaller amounts of drugs.
Right.
And so I was, and what's funny is the photography class was like the perfect place to do it because you had the dark room and you could use film cases to distribute. So I basically got arrested at school, but they couldn't get me to confess. They tried to trick me and stuff. So I got forced to go into, all the minors programs like AA and NA by the courts, was on probation. And I managed to get through that, got clean. By this point, I had been drinking a little bit, but not like something crazy. I was clean for about a year. It wasn't really hard for me to get clean after about a week or two because I have to get through the physical addiction. But I remember about a year after getting clean, someone had aftershock, and I was like, "Oh, sounds like it would taste delicious." And so for some reason, I was willing to try it.
Right.
And I remember that I drank the entire bottle, took it outside, smashed it on the ground, and was picking the rock candy out of the broken glass, and sucking on it to get the alcohol off of it.
Right.
And I eventually ran out of that and drove up to the store and bought 3 40s of OE and a pint of Pop-Off. So for $8.87, I got a pint of Pop-Off and 3 40s of OE. And I drank all that, and I don't remember what happened for about 2 years after that.
Right.
I got pulled over, drunk driving a bunch of times. I could talk my way out of it. I've been handcuffed in the back of cop cars at least 4 times and talked my way out of it with powder coming out of my nose. Like, I'll wreck a car, get arrested, be in the back of a cop car, handcuffed, with powder coming out of my nose, and talk the cop into letting me go.
Right.
Like, I was so good. I was like a master Houdini at using words to undo handcuffs. Everyone said I've never met anyone who can get unarrested faster than you. So what's funny is we were in classes at abnormal psychology in college, and I had a 96% in this class, despite the fact I was not sober 1 minute of one day. And they had said, people who do these steps, and they basically listed the 4 phases of alcoholism. And I was I thought I'd be like 1 or 2 on the list. I was all the way at the very bottom. Like, even though I was so young, I'd managed to torch through this. I would drink until I blacked out 6 days a week. And I'd wake up in different places, not knowing how I got there.
Right.
Every day. I managed to make it to school the next day, but in my karate bag, I would have 40s, and I didn't know how they got there. And I'd have beer all over my belt, my gi, my combat pads, all types of stuff. So it's like you University of Michigan on the Taekwondo team, and your shit's covered in beer. Where you have to walk in to spar with people, and it's like, it's like this abnormal psych class is like, you will never succeed at life if you've made it this far.
Right.
And shortly after that, I had gotten arrested for real this time with a DUI, and I'm an adult now. And I remember I cut my hair. I used to have hair down to my waist. And I cut my hair, and I had not had a drink since, and it's been almost 18 years. That it was like either this is you or you can be a doctor, but you can't be both.
Right.
Because I remember I had gotten a C- in organic chemistry. And that's the Weeder class. That's what determines, are you smart enough to be a doctor or not?
Right.
And so the evidence indicated I wasn't. So I got sober, came back, got like an A+ or something in that class. And I was like, I guess I can do this shit. And so I focused on that. And everything went really good for a long time. And then when I got out of medicine, I started smoking weed again when I was bodybuilding. I'd already won a show, was sponsored on magazine covers, walked away from medicine because it was so crooked, and then I got back into weed. And I managed to compete high as fuck for 7 years, doing very well. For some reason, I was the only person that I've ever met in the AA program that says, you know, they always tell you, if you go to smoke weed, you'll go back to drinking. I was the only person I've ever met who could smoke weed and not go back to drinking. And it was, although weed did not make it so I couldn't succeed, I couldn't do very well at anything but bodybuilding for some reason.
Right.
So in periods when I would then sober up, like when I started at Mind and Muscle, I gave up weed. I was like, this is a real job. Like I could actually be something. I can make videos and I can make products and I can write articles and I can positively influence humanity in a positive direction. Teaching them how to get more powerful rather than just trying to fix their mistakes and give them Band-Aids that don't really cure anything like
Right.
medicine
Right.
in America. And managed to go back to weed, fucked it all up. Stayed pretty much smoked weed from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed up until last March. And so right now, I guess that means I've got like 10 months. And I would say that in the past 10 months, I've done so much better with Valhalla Labs and with my coaching business and even interacting with people. I mean, people who've met me in the past 10 months are like, this fucking asshole. Believe me, I was worse when I was high. So it's like, oh man, the shit I would say.
Right.
So,
No filter.
No filter. Just like, and then your sins are on your sleeve too. Like you don't have any type of super ego shoving shit down. You're just a complete driven instinct animal when you're high all the fucking time and your whole life is about fulfilling your needs.
Right.
So now it's kind of like I'm back to being the old me from when I'm 15. I just got like 15, 30 years, 25 years worth of maturing to do to catch up to my actual physical age. And it's going real slow, but at least it's going.
Right.
And so that's pretty much my journey in a quick nutshell. Because I'm like a 17-year-old with a 38-year-old body who's got a control of an international company.
Right. What was the reason for going back to smoking weed in the first place? Was there like was it for anxiety management? Was it just what was the reason for it?
Okay, I think it was threefold. One, I had made a commitment to myself that I would give myself 10 years totally sober so I could make it through med school, be a successful physician, have a nice house, have a wife, have a dog, and then I could try it again and see if I'd be able to manage it. Two, my grandfather had just died.
Right.
He was the only person I respected or looked up to in the whole world. So without anyone to displease, without anyone to let down, what did it matter?
Right.
And two, because of how pro-health and anti-prescription drugs I was, and how they would call me in the office and they'd be like, you can't write people diets anymore. They're getting off all their pills. We're not making any money. It's like when that job I was fired from, I could have went somewhere else and practiced medicine somewhere else. But I'm like, fuck all you guys. I'm going to do it my way. Even if I have to be broke for 10 years, I'm going to change how this shit's done. Because I have enough passion to lead people into a brighter future.
Right.
But deep down, I felt like I let my grandfather down. So I was ultra depressed about that. I had no type of male role model, central leadership figure. I was all alone, I guess you could say, as far as motivation goes. And I had fulfilled my requirements of sobriety. I had set myself, I gave myself 10 years, you can't touch a goddamn thing.
Right.
So after 10 years, I went and tried it. Dude, I tore through all of my, at the time, wife, now ex-wife's, weed supply in like 2 days. I smoked like 1 ounce of weed in like 2 days. I couldn't believe how strong. They say in AA that while you're in here at this meeting, your addiction's outside doing push-ups, waiting, that it gets stronger. The older you get, even if you put it away for 10 years, when you come back to it, it's stronger. And it's always stronger than you.
You don't just come back and do a little bit and then build up to. You go right back to where you were. Once you're an addict, you're always an addict, and that chemical dependency that you have is there regardless. So as soon as you start doing it again, it's like you never quit.
But you're a strong old motherfucker, Keith. People try to stab you at work all the time. You don't
Right.
just feel fear, but I'm afraid of me.
Right.
It's like the addict inside, the beast inside, it's so hungry for self-destructive things. It's the only thing I can't beat.
Right.
In AA, they teach you have to have a higher power.
Right.
Whether it's Thor, whether it's Odin's wisdom, the strength of Thor will carry me through this and make it so that I know the right things to do or know to ask for help when I don't. It's like you cannot beat yourself when yourself is an evil drug addict.
Right.
If it's out to destroy you. So it's like no matter how much ego you have, it's you you're fighting against. You're never going to outdo you when you don't have moral compunction or restraint or a super ego holding you back.
Right.
Nothing puts the addict in you back. It's always going to find a way if you let it get started. So you have to keep it basically staked in a coffin like a vampire, not let it out play in this moonlight even once in a while. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to put the stake back in. You're fucked.
Joe, is that something you found that when you would quit doing it for a contest prep, and then when you'd pick back up after you were done competing, was it just the addiction just as strong right off the bat as what it was when you quit?
Well, they have a saying in an A, one's one is too much and 1,000 never enough.
Right.
So you'd start off, and friends would come around. I remember trading somebody a box of Metrex packets for a pack of dope.
Right.
And that pack of dope lasted me all weekend, and I'm like, okay, I won't get addicted again. I'll just, party this weekend, do a little bit. But before you know it, I'm doing 4 packs a day again,
Right.
It's just that little bit, just,
Triggered it.
and just reels you back in, Mm-hmm. So, again, that was back, when you're younger, and, times change. I think, different things, obviously, once you get clean, you have kids, and, there's way too much to lose after that,
Right.
and if the thought doesn't even cross your mind after that. Faith comes in as well,
Right.
Not necessarily Odin or Thor, but, you put your faith in Christ or wherever you want to do, and that gives you strength too, so there's a lot of ways, to just, I think that people, can overcome it, but, there's so much in this world to be thankful for, to look at, and, when you're clean, it just, you shake your head and you're like, yeah,
that was me.
The grass is greener. Why would I want to go back? You
Right.
know, I remember when I was living in Chicago in my 20s, I had some roommates, and I came home, and surprisingly, I didn't think they thought I was coming home, but they're all sitting there doing lines on the table, and they all freaked out when they saw me because they knew that, I've been clean now for a few years or whatever, and they're all freaked out. I'm like, I'm cool. Go on, carry on.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't need that.
Yeah, so. It amazes me, some of the people that were able just to party and not be addicted. I'm like, man, all right, but still, it eventually catches up to everybody, I think.
I would think so. I mean, they just maybe didn't have the resources available or at the time to make it more so that it would become an addiction. I mean, this stuff is addictive to begin with. We're talking about, chemical dependencies. You develop a chemical dependency. I think the people that fall into it hard are the ones that just have the addictive personality, where it gives them something that they don't have in their life. It gives them that feeling that they don't have for whatever reason. And that addictive personality is searching for something all the time. And that's like I said, we for as bodybuilders, I think we kind of understand that because I think a lot of your good bodybuilders and the ones that stick with it for a long time, they have addictive personalities, or else we wouldn't do something like this. We're addicted to the lifestyle. We're addicted to the feeling that we get, the satisfaction that we get from a good training session, the satisfaction we get from a contest prep that we make ours, and the feeling we get on stage. We end up becoming addicted to that kind of stuff. So it's an addiction, but it's an addiction in, maybe in a more constructive manner than a destructive manner.
Right.
Sublimation.
Right. I mean, I understand, obviously I'm sitting here with my wife and seeing firsthand the things that she had, but long before that, I was a lot like you, Joe, and Todd, where, I came from a very, very, broken home, I guess, divorced parents and that, but I had a dad who was extremely, extremely overprotective, and a mom that was extremely lax and didn't really give two shits what I did because she was more concerned about her own stuff. I rebelled after I got out of the house. I took off. I turned 18. I got the hell out. I rebelled. I had some issues going on with athletics. I lost some football scholarships and such because of injury. So I needed an outlet. I started hanging around the wrong people and partying. Got arrested a week after I graduated high school with weed in the car. And if that was the worst thing that they found, I guess I was lucky, because just that weekend before there, we were partying pretty hard, driving around the back roads and stuff outside of Lake Odessa with probably 6 people in the car. So they found weed. They took me to jail. That should have been my wake-up call. It wasn't. I ended up having to do some community service and then go to NA meetings for, I believe, for 6 months. I basically, like everybody else, who would go to them for the first time. Yeah, whatever. I don't need this shit. I don't have an issue. Right back into doing what I was doing before. This continued until I was probably 23, I would think. About 23 years old. But it got worse. It wasn't just weed and a little bit of alcohol anymore. Now it was full-blown alcohol all the time, which had graduated itself to ecstasy and cocaine, to the point where, I was basically blowing my paycheck at one point on coke every week for quite a while, hiding the fact that this was going on from my friends. Only certain friends knew what was going on, and they were the ones that were doing the same damn thing I was doing. And I realized I had a little bit of an issue. And one day I just decided, look, you can go down the path of destruction, and you can be like this guy over here that you're looking at, who's, you're in the club at age 23, and this guy's 36 years old, and he has nothing to his name, but he's just, messed up in the club. And, some people might think he's good to hang around, but you're looking at him going, man, I don't want to be him.
Yeah.
I don't want to be him. So I made the decision, and I quit doing it cold turkey. And it's been, now it's almost 15 and a half, almost 16 years, and that I haven't done any kind of drugs. So, I mean, I'll have a drink every now and again for fun, like most people will. That was never really the issue. Alcohol wasn't. To be honest with you, I hate the feeling of being drunk and being hungover the next day. So that was never really a problem. But with the drugs and stuff, I didn't get those feelings. All I got was the chemical reaction and the feel good from it. So that was, I guess, right around that same time, I got back in the gym. I had been out of the gym since I graduated high school. I got back in the gym, started training for powerlifting, started powerlifting, remembered how much I love just challenging myself. And I went powerlifted after that. And the rest is history. I kind of left that all behind me. It's there. I mean, I remember it happening. So you guys talk about this stuff. I've seen it firsthand. I've lived some of it, maybe not to the extreme that you had. But it was pretty bad enough to where it scared me and made me basically scare myself straight.
Yeah. We all have those moments, I think, when you get to that point,
It's clarity. It's clarity. You realize what's actually important and what you're actually fucking doing to yourself at that point, That's I guess that's what it was. I realized at that moment, I don't want to be that guy.
right?
I don't want to be him when I'm 36, you know. That's not me. I don't want to be that, have that life, you know, because this guy had nothing. I mean, he was a nothing and a nobody. He was being surrounded by other kids that were 21, 22 years old that thought he was really cool because he had all these connections and everything. But when you sit back and you look at it, he looked like he was really tired. He looked older than 30, the 36 that he was. He looked like he was about 56. And, you know, you go you realize that this guy's getting a ride everywhere he goes because he doesn't have a car, because he doesn't have a driver's license, and he doesn't have a home really to go to, other than, you know, he's living in and out of houses with friends all the time at age 36. I didn't want to be that guy. And I made that decision at that point. I wasn't going to be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only difference is I didn't have, like Joe, you had a support system, which I think, you know, for you being where you were at made it so that it was possible, because I don't think a lot of people have those support systems. I didn't have one, but I wasn't falling as far into it as at that point as you were, so I was able to get myself out, because I really had no support. I had nothing. I mean, I had a couple friends and that was it, and they really didn't know what was necessarily going on at the time because I had kept it hidden pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the support system helped. I mean, because
Yeah.
I let them down so many times, and you know, it's just a matter of time where you think they're going to give up on you, but they didn't. You
Right.
know, I moved to Chicago. They thought I was clean, and again, the same shit I pulled in South Padre with the Vicodins. I'm like, all right, you know, not using as much. I just left the methadone clinic. I'll just come start working here in Chicago, and I'll wean off my stuff. And now, you know, then I had to break the news to them that now I was still kind of strung out when I got here.
Right.
So, you know, so all right, well, you know, stop working, and there's the couch for a week, you know.
Right.
But you know, again, I think just in general as bodybuilders, we have these OCD habits. You know, I mean,
Right.
we track our food, we count our food. You know, I think just having these personalities, again, like what Todd was saying. You know, your average person who gets addicted to this stuff hasn't gone through a prep, hasn't suffered, you know, and I think it takes a special breed to do that. And to do that, I think you're more conditioned to be able to fight the withdrawals too, or not afraid to go, you know, dive feet first into it and say, okay, screw it. I'm going to suffer. I can stick this one out.
Yeah, I can manage. I can make it through.
Right. You know, perseverance. I think a lot of it has to do with our generation too. You know?
Yeah, I know that yeah, you hit the nail on the head there too. It was a different time that, you know, we grew up. Different ideas, different values, different things. I mean, you were expected to be tougher. Things weren't kind of like things weren't handed to you. You had to work for things. There weren't special programs for this, that, and the other. So I mean, yeah, that kind of goes hand in hand. This next generation, I don't know, as far as with addictions and stuff, if you're going to have as many success stories out of you know, from getting out of it without long rehabs and stuff, because, you know, it is hard to get out of it once you get into it. And if you don't have that mentality, then it's not going to happen for you.
The potency of this stuff nowadays, too.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. I mean, and it's not only just the potency if it's, you know, like a pure chemical, it's what they're mixing with this shit. You know, you hear all these stories of people dying off of stuff that I'm like, well, I had friends that did tons of cocaine. Like you said, you were injecting the cocaine and stuff. What is it what the actual cocaine is, or what they're cutting this stuff with that's actually making it, you know, more potent to where people are dying off of it or getting more addicted to it?
Yeah.
There was just a story on the news this morning of a kid who was like 18 years old who was taking LSD.
Yeah.
And it was laced with something, and he broke into some 56-year-old woman's house and beat the living hell out of her.
Right.
And was arrested for it. Had no idea what was going on. Had no idea what he did. Woke up on the floor, handcuffed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different time. I mean,
That just happened a couple days ago.
Obviously different generation, different times, and different circumstances, and a lot of things involved. I think, like you said, the constant in all this is that addictive personalities, I think, are going to be the ones that are going to have the hardest time once they fall. But if if they don't have that mental edge like we do, where we're just sick and sadistic and twisted anyway, that we can torture ourselves with the contest prep, they're not going to make it out of it without a lot of help. And the fact that all of us were able to do it on our own with minimal help and just maybe the support of some friends and loved ones is pretty remarkable. I would say that all of us are probably more of the exception than the rule.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You guys got anything else? Todd,
Nah.
anything?
Not really.
I mean, there's always stories, but
Yeah, I don't necessarily need to get involved in some of the stories and stuff. I mean, I think we can kind of
We'll use our imagination.
use your imagination as to some of the things. I do remember one that it's funny now. It wasn't. Well, I guess it was probably funny then too, but it's funny now that I can look back on it. I ended up in Detroit at the Detroit Electronic Music Festival. I was 22, I think, and I don't remember how I got there. No, I mean it's in Grand Rapids, and then the next day I ended up in Detroit at a hotel down by the Renaissance Park at some Motel 6. That when they see flea bitten motel, that was a nice way to put it. This place had holes in the walls. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was a prostitute in the room next to me. This was nasty, and I'm there with people that I don't know. I mean, I ended up showing up with people I have no clue who they are, and I don't know how I got there. So, that was for that time period for me. That was typical. You know, I laugh about it now because I'm like, man, I was like dumb and I was lucky. But you know, do you think about it? I could have had something seriously bad happen to me.
yeah.
And I got lucky. I ended up calling a friend, and the friend came and got me, and the rest is history after that. It was shortly after that. It was probably about 6 months after that, I think, that I finally said, okay, enough is enough of this. You know, this is becoming habit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff.
Anything else? All right.
Yeah.
Guys, I appreciate it. Hopefully some people listen to this one, share it up and stuff so we can kind of get the stories out there, because if it can help me, you know, might be a bodybuilder out there right now that's struggling, you know, Joe, like you were, I mean, we can help them. There's anybody is listening, I'm always available to talk to. I'm sure all of us are always available to talk to and stuff. So if they do
Definitely.
have a problem,
Find us on Facebook or whatnot.
but I appreciate it. Joe, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
We'll have you on again. We'll actually talk bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Oh.
Take care, Todd. Taylor.
All right. So for Joe Rubino and for Tyler Fabbri and for my co-host, Doctortoddlee, I'm Keith Fabbri saying this has been the Weekly Grind Podcast, sponsored by Valhalla Labs at valhalla-labs.com. Everybody have a great day and great next week, and we'll come back next week with a new show. I think we're going to do some training stuff. So until then, keep grinding.